Hello again, 110. In this particular video, I'm going to go over the Chapter 11 terms here quickly, and then I'm going to do some PowerPoint slides as well. And this is one of my favorite chapters. This deals with political parties. Power over policy is what parties seek, and the only way you're going to get any power is by winning elections. And that's their main function. They nominate candidates, and they need to try win elections. And in modern times, because of the prevalence of media, you need to have a candidate that has public appeal and the ability to raise money, unfortunately. Media is not cheap. Seeking time on television or setting up various other media outlets in order to get your message out is going to cost you. In the early days of the Republic, the convention was much more important. Events at the convention could lead to a candidate being elected, such as with William Jennings Bryan in 1896. The populist candidate so intrigued the Democratic Party convention members with his cross of gold speech that they nominated him to be their candidate against McKinley. That was the end of the Populist Party and the beginning of the Democratic Party co-opting many of those late 19th century issues, like the inflation of the currency, trying to limit the power of the railroads, and trying to regulate monopolies and the huge industrialists that had come to dominate American society. The convention today is mostly a TV show. It's a great event for the city that hosts it. The majority party gets to choose the committee chairpersons in the Congress. And the minority party pretty much fills the role of being the loyal dissenter. Parties can be thought of in the 21st century as presenting a brand. You pretty much know the ideology of that candidate based on what party they're representing. And that gives cues to the voter in order to tell them whether or not to vote. It saves them a great deal of time. People are very busy in modern society. And that is the main reason why these brands of the candidate and the cues that they give to the electorate go hand in hand. A good place to get involved in the political process is at the grassroots. And usually what that means is that you get people registered to vote. And that's a good place for people who want to get into the political world to get their start. Join a political party and to help use that time at the local level, of the grassroots level, to register people. The Republicans right now are the majority, and the Democrats are the minority party in the Congress and in the executive. There are 5 main party eras. The original one, the Federalists, the Hamiltonians versus the Jeffersonians, the Democratic Republicans, that lasted till about 1815. There you have the rumblings and the beginnings, really more in the 1820s with Andrew Jackson. The modern Democratic Party has its roots with Jackson and all those opposed to Jackson, who came to call themselves Whigs. Borrowing from the English political tradition, the Whigs were the anti-monarchy group in the Parliament. The third era was the beginning of the anti-slavery movement. The modern Republican Party has its roots in the anti-slavery movement. And that lasted until the watershed election of McKinley versus Bryan in 1896. Depending upon what historian you talk to, you can either say this confirmed the Republican goals and planks and values of the gold standard, big business, and high tariffs, or if you're another historian like Oliver Stone, you can say they bought that election and told their workers to just go out and vote for McKinley. And that ushered in the second Republican era until the Great Depression, which was replaced by the New Deal and the new coalition that was formed by FDR of underrepresented groups in the political sphere. African Americans, Jews, Catholics, labor unions, all bonded together in that New Deal coalition, and it was solid until the late 1960s. In 1980, that coalition dissolved. Many Catholics, because of their right to life position, moved to the Republican Party and heavily supported Reagan. You could say maybe we're in a 6th era now, basically arguing against the legacy of the New Deal and the involvement of the national government in people's lives. There's your formal definition of parties. They want to influence government. It's very difficult to find a candidate with popular appeal and the ability to raise money. Mitt Romney spent $30 million of his own money running for office in 2012. They nominate candidates to win elections. That's the difference between political parties and interest groups. Today, the primary is very important. You have to be registered in order to vote in primaries in most states. I've never lived in a state that had an open primary, where it didn't matter if you were a registered Republican or registered Democrat. In New York State, Florida, and Texas, you had to be a registered party member in order to vote in the primary. And this is the formal process. If you're interested in that, take a look at that slide. It's on the site. Again, these are the types of primaries. I've only ever seen a closed primary. This gives more party organizers power over the process. Getting out the vote is another big function of the political party. Again, we just talked about the brand. You have a pretty good idea of the ideology of this candidate just by what party they represent. And that saves you time in trying to stay informed. Generally speaking, these alliances are still true. These ideologies are good starting points for a person trying to figure out the political process in the United States. These are what these two parties stand for. And if they control the government, they are going to push these policies. Be familiar with these different affiliations. These are the people who tend to support these political parties. The National Convention today is a big show. It's usually already been decided who's going to be the presidential candidate. The organizations are very important at the state and local level because all politics is local. This is a formal chart showing organizations of political parties. Again, if you're interested in this, take a look at it on your own. These are services that political parties can provide. Those are big reasons why we have only two parties. We have a winner-take-all system in just about every state. I think there's only two. Nebraska and Maine will split their electoral votes for the president. I'm not so sure about this ideological room anymore in this day and age with the information that's available. But you have to get registered in order to get on the ballot, and that's difficult to do. That is a legal barrier to a third party being able to get on the ballot. We've always had two parties. Going back to the beginning of the course, we had Federalists and Anti-Federalists. And that's where the party eras come in and are very important. We talked about this first one. The War of 1812 was pretty much the end of the Federalists. They talked about secession way before the Southerners did. The agrarians and the commercial capitalists were opposed to one another. Out of that became the modern Democratic Party, which was the party of the South, the party of agrarians and Westerners. They were dead set against the banking tariffs, whereas Whigs supported the American system of internal improvements, high tariffs protecting manufacturing, and the bank creating a sound financial system. The modern Republican Party has its roots in 1856 or 60, because that's when Lincoln won. They were the anti-slavery party, the abolition party, more concerned with national power and commercial capitalism, and they won. Grover Cleveland was the only Democratic president, and he's a conservative from the Civil War until Woodrow Wilson in 1912. This is a nice chart that shows all the different political parties if you're interested. The Green Party, for our purposes, Ralph Nader was their candidate in 2000. He was the last third-party candidate to have any real impact on the national scene. He was funded by the government, and he was able to run again in 2004, where he didn't garner anywhere near the votes that he did in 2000. There's the fourth system. Again, that 1896 election was a watershed election. McKinley won in a landslide, depending upon who you talk to, why he won. And the rural minority party becomes the Democrats. The New Deal saw another realignment because all of those groups got representation in the Democratic Party. And the Republicans became more these areas. The Midwest still is a strong supporter of the Republicans. New England, not so much anymore. The Civil Rights Movement split the Democrats, and those conservative Democrats are now Republicans. And it's definitely ideology versus ideology now, since 1980. And we've talked about the legal barriers, ideological room. I don't really agree with that. This is the textbook definition. And most people are either Republican or Democrat in the United States. And that was the 2012 election results. Parties are definitely necessary for democracy because they allow for participation and they allow for effective government because the government does change over time. It gives people ideas about who they're voting for because of the ideological planks of the party. And they help to run the elections at the local level. And that's it.